I've closed down Pinehurst Crematory alone for 8 years. It's always the same routine. Shut off the burners, verify all chambers are cooling properly, lock the prep room, set the alarm. The building sits on the edge of a commercial park in suburban Oregon, surrounded by warehouses and distribution centers. After 6 p.m., everyone's gone, just me and the hum of the cooling fans. Thursday, March 21st. I finished my last cremation at 4:30. A man named Curtis Lang, 49 years old. The paperwork said sudden cardiac event. He'd collapsed at a gym, pronounced dead at the scene. No warning. His wife had been in the day before, still in shock, moving through the arrangements like she was underwater. I processed the cremation by the book. Everything normal. Temperature held steady, timing was standard. By 5:15, the retort had cycled down to cooling mode. The remains would need to sit overnight. Protocol says we wait until the chamber drops below 200 degrees before we open it. Usually takes 12 to 14 hours. I did my end-of-day checklist, cleaned the prep area, filed the paperwork, checked the 3 other retorts, all empty, all cold. The building was quiet except for the ventilation system and the occasional metallic tick of contracting metal as Chamber 3 cooled down. That's where Lang was. I was in the front office at 6:45, putting on my jacket, when I heard it. A knock. Not a creak, not settling metal. A knock, deliberate, hollow, like knuckles on a door. I stopped moving, just stood there with one arm in my jacket sleeve, listening. The building was silent again, ventilation hum, nothing else. I told myself it was the cooling metal. 8 years, I'd heard all kinds of sounds from those chambers as they cooled. Pops, cracks, groans. Metal expands when it heats, contracts when it cools, makes noise. I knew this. But it had sounded like a knock. I finished putting on my jacket, picked up my keys. The front office was separated from the cremation area by a hallway and 2 fire doors. I'd have to walk back through to check. Or I could just leave, set the alarm, go home, come back in the morning. I walked back through. The hallway was dimly lit. We keep the overheads off after hours, just the emergency lighting. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. I pushed through the first fire door, then the second. The cremation area was cooler than the office, always was. The 4 retorts sat in a row along the far wall, big industrial units that looked like oversized ovens. Chambers 1, 2, and 4 were dark, offline. Chamber 3 had its cooling indicator light on, steady orange. I stood there in the semi-darkness, listening. Nothing. The ventilation system hummed. Somewhere outside, a truck drove past on the main road. Normal sounds. I checked the temperature readout on Chamber 3's control panel, 847 degrees. Still way too hot to open. The chamber would be glowing inside, residual heat radiating from the brickwork. I turned to leave. The knock came again, louder this time, clearer, from Chamber 3. One knock, solid, unmistakable. My stomach went cold. I stood facing the retort, maybe 10 feet away. The orange cooling light glowed steady. The digital readout showed 847 degrees. Behind that steel door, Curtis Lang had been burning for 7 hours. There was nothing left but ash and bone fragments. I knew this. I'd done this job for 8 years. I knew exactly what happened to a human body at 1800 degrees. The soft tissue goes first, burns away in the first hour, then the organs, then the bones calcify, fracture, break down. By the time the chamber starts cooling, there's nothing left that could make sound, nothing left that could move, nothing left that could knock. But I'd heard it twice. I thought about calling someone, my supervisor, the funeral director, but what would I say? I'm hearing knocks from inside a cooling chamber? They'd think the job was getting to me. 8 years, maybe I was finally cracking. I approached the chamber slowly. The heat coming off it was still intense. I could feel it on my face from 5 feet away. The observation window was too bright to look through, just glowing orange-red. I put my hand near the door, couldn't get within 6 inches, too hot. "Hello?" I said. I don't know why I said it, felt stupid the moment it left my mouth, but the word just came out. Silence. I waited, counted to 30 in my head. The ventilation system hummed, the cooling light glowed. Nothing moved. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on chamber 3, reached the fire door, pushed through, let it swing shut behind me, stood in the hallway breathing faster than I should have been. It was the metal, had to be. Thermal contraction. I'd heard it 100 times before, just never quite like that. Never so deliberate. Never so much like... The third knock came through both fire doors. Loud enough that I heard it in the hallway. Sharp, precise, like someone on the other side demanding to be heard. I left. Didn't run, didn't panic, just walked to the front office, grabbed my bag, set the alarm, locked the door. Got in my car, drove home, ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. But I didn't sleep much. I came in the next morning at 7 a.m., disarmed the alarm, went straight to the cremation area. Chamber 3's readout showed 174 degrees, cool enough to open. I unsealed the door, let it swing wide. The chamber was empty except for Curtis Lang's remains, exactly as they should be. Pale ash, bone fragments, recognizable pieces of skull and pelvis. Standard, nothing unusual. I processed the remains, ran them through the grinder, transferred everything to the urn her wife had selected. Professional, by the book. She picked them up that afternoon. I gave her the urn, the death certificate, expressed my condolences. She held the urn against her chest and cried. She said she couldn't believe he was gone, said it happened so fast, said she never got to say goodbye. I've closed down Pinehurst alone hundreds of times since then. Same routine. Shut off the burners, verify the chambers, lock up, set the alarm. The building makes its usual sounds, cooling metal, ventilation hum, occasional creaks, but I've never heard that knock again. Sometimes I think about Curtis Lang, 49 years old, sudden cardiac event, no warning, no goodbye. And I think about his wife, crying in my office, holding his ashes, saying she never got to say goodbye. And I wonder if maybe he was trying to say it to her. One last time. I've been monitoring cremation temperatures at Oakmont Memorial for 12 years. The retort runs at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. It doesn't fluctuate. The burners are industrial grade. The insulation is ceramic fiber designed to contain that kind of heat. In 12 years, I've seen temperature variations of maybe 20, 30 degrees when we first open the door. But that's it. The system is built to maintain consistency. January 9th started normal. Tuesday morning, cold outside but nothing unusual for northern Michigan. Single digits, wind off the lake. Inside the facility, it was warm. The retort throws enough ambient heat that we barely run the building furnace in winter. I had 2 cremations scheduled. The first was complete by 10 a.m. The second was a woman named Beverly Sutton, 68 years old. The paperwork listed cause of death as acute respiratory failure. She'd been in hospice for 3 weeks before she passed. Her son had come in the day before to finalize arrangements, seemed at peace with everything. Quiet man. Didn't ask many questions. I prepped her at 10:30, standard verification, checked the ID bracelet against the authorization form, confirmed the medical examiner's signature, made sure the pacemaker had been removed, everything correct. I positioned her on the cardboard tray we use, wheeled her to the loading platform. The retort was already at temperature. I'd monitored it during the previous cremation, steady at 1797 degrees the entire time. The digital readout on the control panel showed 1803 now, normal range. I initiated the loading sequence. The hydraulic platform lifted, the chamber door opened with that familiar blast of heat against my face. I could feel it on my skin, that dry, scorching wave, smell of hot metal and brick. I guided the tray inside, stepped back, hit the button to close the door. The seal engaged. 6 seconds for the door to close completely. Then the burners would cycle to their active phase, flames visible through the observation window. I watched the door descend, heard the pneumatic locks click into place. That's when I noticed the temperature reading. 1751 degrees. I blinked, looked again. 1743, dropping. The burners were running, I could hear them, that low roar they make when they're firing. I stepped to the observation window, looked inside. Flames were there, blue, orange, exactly as they should be. But the readout kept falling. 1698 degrees, 1654. It was like watching something impossible happen in real time. My first thought was sensor malfunction. Had to be. I pulled up the diagnostic screen on the computer terminal. All systems showed green. Burner pressure, normal. Gas flow, normal. Oxygen levels, normal. No error codes. 1789 degrees. And then I felt it. The room went cold. Not the normal temperature of the building. Cold like someone had opened a freezer. Like stepping outside into that January wind. I could see my breath. Just for a second, just a small cloud in front of my face, and then I thought I was imagining it. But my arms broke out on goosebumps. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was standing 15 feet from a chamber burning at, I looked at the screen, 1512 degrees, and I was cold. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed dimmer. The hum of the ventilation system sounded distant, muffled. Everything felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, like the air pressure had changed, like the room had shifted into some other version of itself. I grabbed my phone off the desk, pulled up the temperature app for the building's HVAC system. It showed 71 degrees, same as it had been all morning. But I was cold. 1767 degrees now. I thought about calling my supervisor, thought about hitting the emergency shutdown, but something stopped me. Not fear exactly, more like I needed to see what would happen, needed to understand what I was watching. The observation window started to fog, just at the edges, condensation forming on glass that should have been too hot to touch. I reached out slowly, expecting the usual searing heat that radiates from it. The glass was cool, not room temperature, cool, like it had been sitting in a basement. 1721 degrees. I could hear my own heartbeat. The building was silent, except for that muffled roar of the burners, and even that sounded far away. I thought about Beverly Sutton, 68 years old, acute respiratory failure, 3 weeks in hospice. What had she seen in those last weeks? What had she felt in those final moments? The temperature hit 1384 degrees. Then it stopped falling. Just stopped, held there for maybe 10 seconds. The cold in the room seemed to intensify. I was hugging myself now, actually shivering. The observation window was almost completely fogged over. I couldn't see the flames anymore. And then, as quickly as it started, it reversed. 1401 degrees, 1448, 1476. The colds vanished, not gradually, just gone. The room was warm again, that familiar ambient heat from the retort. The observation window on the control panel started to evaporate, and I could see the flames inside burning bright and steady. The ventilation system seemed loud suddenly, normal. 1512 degrees, 1569. Within 90 seconds, the temperature was back to 1789. The diagnostic screen still showed all systems normal, no errors, no warnings, like nothing had happened. I stood there for a full minute, just breathing. Then I pulled up the temperature log on the computer. The system records readings every 30 seconds. I scrolled to the current cremation. Every entry showed between 1795 and 1805. No drop, no anomaly. According to the log, the temperature had never fluctuated. But I watched it happen. I felt the cold. I touched the cool glass. The cremation continued normally. 2 hours, 18 minutes total. Standard duration. I processed Beverly Sutton's remains the next morning, transferred them to the urn her son had selected. He picked them up that afternoon. I handed him the container, told him I was sorry for his loss. He nodded, thanked me, and left. I pulled the maintenance records later, checked every component of that retort. The sensors had been calibrated in November, all within specification. The burners had been serviced in October. The insulation had been inspected. Everything perfect. I requested the security footage, watched it back. You can see me standing at the control panel, see me step to the observation window. The timestamp shows I'm there for about a minute, but the video quality isn't great. You can't see my breath, can't see the fog on the glass, can't prove what I felt. I still work at Oakmont Memorial, still monitor the temperatures. The retort runs steady at 1800 degrees, has for 12 years, will probably run steady for 12 more. But sometimes, when I'm loading a body, I think about that minute, that impossible cold in a room full of fire, and I wonder what Beverly Sutton was trying to take with her. I've operated the digital tracking system at Riverside Crematory for 9 years. It's not complicated. Scan the ID bracelet, verify on screen, confirm the match, start the process. The system logs everything: timestamps, temperature readings, operator initials. It's designed so nothing falls through the cracks. November 14th was a standard Thursday. Cold outside, that kind of gray Connecticut morning where the sun never really shows up. I had 3 cremations scheduled. The first 2 went smooth. A woman named Patricia Voss, 81, and a man named Frank Delgado, 67. By 2 p.m., I was setting up the third. His name was Gregory Shaw, 54 years old, cardiac arrest. The funeral home sent over all the paperwork that morning, and I'd already done my preliminary check. Everything matched. The ID bracelet on his wrist had a barcode and his full name printed underneath: Gregory Matthew Shaw. Date of birth, case number, all of it. I wheeled him to the retort on the motorized gurney. The facility was quiet except for the low rumble of the exhaust fans. I could smell that particular combination of industrial cleaner and heated metal that you get used to after a while. My coffee sat cooling on the desk near the control panel, next to my phone and the day's paperwork. I positioned the gurney at the loading station. Then I took the handheld scanner, looks like the ones they use at grocery stores, and aimed it at Shaw's bracelet. The red laser beam swept across the barcode. Beep. The screen on the wall lit up. It always shows the name in large letters, green text on black background, so you can verify from anywhere in the room. It's a safety feature. You're supposed to read it out loud, confirm it matches, then initial the digital log. But the name on the screen wasn't Gregory Shaw. It said Lawrence Brennan. I stood there, holding the scanner, just staring. Lawrence Brennan. I knew that name. I'd cremated him 13 months ago, September of last year. I remembered because his daughter had called 3 times before the cremation, asking questions, nervous about the process, wanted to make sure we'd treat him with dignity. I'd walked her through everything. Lawrence Brennan had been dead for over a year. His ashes had been picked up by his family the same week. I looked down at the bracelet on the body in front of me. Gregory Matthew Shaw, right there in printed black letters. I scanned it again. Beep. Lawrence Brennan. The screen didn't flicker, didn't glitch. The letters just sat there, bright green, impossible. My hands went cold. Not from fear exactly, more like that feeling when something fundamental stops making sense, like when you put your keys down and turn around and they're gone, that specific confusion that comes before panic. I walked to the computer terminal, pulled up the database, typed in Shaw's case number. His file came up immediately, all correct. Photo matched the body, authorization signed, medical examiner's permit filed. I searched Lawrence Brennan's file next. Status, completed 09/17/2023. Remains released to family. Case closed. The screen on the wall still showed Brennan's name. I called our IT contractor, got voicemail, left a message trying to sound calm. Hey, it's Dale at Riverside. Having a display issue with the ID system. Call me back when you can. I should have stopped right there, should have waited for IT, should have documented the malfunction and rescheduled Shaw for the next day. That's protocol. But I'd been doing this for 9 years. The system had never failed, not once. And Shaw's family was coming at 5 p.m. tomorrow to collect his ashes. They'd already waited 4 days because of some permit delay. I made a decision. I manually entered Shaw's information into the override screen. There's a backup system for exactly this kind of technical failure. Typed his name, case number, date, double-checked the bracelet, triple-checked the paperwork. The body in front of me was absolutely Gregory Matthew Shaw. I initiated the cremation. The retort door opened. Heat poured out. 1800 degrees, standard temperature. I activated the hydraulic platform. Shaw's body began moving into the chamber. And that's when I looked up at the wall screen one more time. It had changed. Not to Shaw's name. Still Brennan. But now there was something else. Below the name, where the system usually displays the case number, there was a line of text I'd never seen before. Not finished. 2 words, green letters, clear as anything. The chamber door sealed, the burners ignited. Through the observation window, I could see the flames beginning their work, and on the screen, Lawrence Brennan's name glowed steady, not finished, underneath. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Then I did what you do when your brain can't process something. I went back to the computer, pulled Brennan's file again, read through every detail. Cause of death, pneumonia complications. Next of kin, daughter, Iris Brennan. Ashes released 09/22/2023. Everything complete, except the screen said not finished. The cremation took 2 hours and 40 minutes, normal duration. Temperature stayed consistent. I processed Shaw's remains, transferred them to the temporary container, labeled it correctly. Professional, by the book. When I shut down the retort at 4:47 p.m., the screen reset, just like that. Went blank, then displayed the standard standby message. Ready, system, like nothing had happened. IT called me back at 6:15. I told him never mind, system was working fine now. He asked if I wanted him to come check it anyway. I said no. I pulled the system logs the next day. Every cremation recorded perfectly. Patricia Voss, 11:20 a.m. Frank Delgado, 1:05 p.m. Gregory Matthew Shaw, 3:15 p.m. No mention of Lawrence Brennan, no error flags, no anomalies. Shaw's family picked up his ashes on schedule. I handed them the container, expressed my condolences, and watched them leave. I still operate the system, still scan the bracelets, verify the names. The screen works perfectly, has for 9 years, will probably work for 9 more. But sometimes I think about pulling Lawrence Brennan's file again, calling his daughter, asking her, what? If everything's okay? If she's noticed anything strange? If her father had any unfinished business? I don't, though, because what would I say? The screen showed his name, just for 2 hours, just once, and I keep wondering what he left undone. I've been a crematory operator for 17 years. Longview Memorial, just outside Baton Rouge. Most people don't think about what happens after the funeral home, after the goodbyes. That's where I come in. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I processed the Harlan case. Robert Harlan, 73 years old, natural causes, the paperwork said. Nothing unusual. The funeral director from Cypress Gardens dropped him off at 9 a.m., right on schedule. I did what I always do. Verified the name on the toe tag against the cremation authorization, checked the pacemaker removal form, made sure everything was documented. The coffin was a standard rental casket, dark cherry veneer, clean, professional. The retort, that's what we call the cremation chamber, was already at temperature. 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd fired it up an hour earlier, let it stabilize. Everything by the book. I wheeled the coffin to the loading dock, positioned it on the hydraulic platform. The facility was quiet, just me and the hum of the ventilation system. I remember looking at that coffin before I hit the button. Don't know why. Something made me pause. The wood grain caught the fluorescent light in a particular way. I could smell the chemical cleaner I'd used on the floor earlier, mixed with that faint metallic scent the retort gives off when it's hot. My coffee was getting cold on the desk behind me. I pressed the green button. The platform lifted smooth, no jerking. The door swung open with its usual pneumatic hiss. Heat washed over me. You never get used to that initial blast. I guided the coffin inside, pulled my hands back quick. The door began to close. Standard procedure. I'd done this exact sequence maybe 4,000 times. That's when it moved. Not much, maybe 2 inches, 3 at most, but I saw it. The coffin shifted to the left, just slightly, like someone had nudged it from inside. My hands were behind my back. The door was already closing, a slow, automated seal that takes about 6 seconds. I wasn't touching anything. I hit the emergency stop. The door froze halfway. My heart was doing something it hadn't done in years, actually racing. I stood there, staring through the gap. The coffin sat there, still, silent. The flames hadn't even started yet. The burners don't ignite until the door fully seals. Platform malfunction, I said out loud. To nobody, to myself. I checked the hydraulic system. Level indicators showed perfect, no oil leaks, no pressure drops. I walked around the entire retort looking for what? I don't know. Some explanation. The floor was level. I'd verified that during the annual inspection 2 months prior. The coffin wasn't improperly loaded. I'd centered it perfectly. I should have called my supervisor. That's protocol. Any irregularity, you document, you report. But I didn't. Because what would I say? The coffin moved? They'd think the heat was getting to me. 17 years, and maybe I was finally cracking. I returned to the control panel, stood there for a full minute, just breathing. The ventilation system whooshed. Outside, a lawnmower started up, the groundskeeper making his rounds. Normal sounds. Normal day. I restarted the sequence. The door continued its seal. This time, I didn't look away. I watched that coffin through the small observation window until the flames obscured everything. It didn't move again. The cremation proceeded normally. 2.5 hours. Temperature stayed consistent. When it was done, I processed the remains like I always do. Swept them into the processor, ground them to ash, transferred them to the temporary urn. Robert Harlan, 73 years old, natural causes. But I checked the maintenance logs anyway. After. Went back 3 months. Every cremation in that retort. No incidents, no reports of movement, no mechanical failures. The chamber had been re-leveled in January. Perfect specifications. I pulled the video footage from the security camera, watched it 4 times. The angle wasn't great, but you could see it. That subtle shift. Left, 2 inches, maybe 3. I found one thing in Harlan's file that the funeral home hadn't mentioned. He'd been dead for 6 days before cremation. Family wanted to wait for a son to fly in from Seattle. 6 days in refrigeration at the funeral home. By the book. Perfectly preserved. But bodies do strange things. Gases build up, muscles contract post-mortem. It's science. It's biology. I know this. I've seen bloating. I've seen limbs shift during processing. It happens. Except it happened before the heat touched him. I still work at Longview Memorial, still process 30, 40 cases a month. I follow every protocol, check every seal, level every platform. And I don't tell anyone about that Tuesday in March, because there's nothing to tell. Mechanical systems malfunction, visual perception fails. The mind plays tricks after 17 years of the same routine. But sometimes, when I'm positioning a coffin, When everything's quiet and correct and by the book, I think about Robert Harlan. I think about that shift, that small, impossible nudge. And I wonder what he was trying to say.